And now, it's time for the Well-Read Llama with your host, author Erin Mifflin.
Hello, listeners. I hope you're all safe and sound after the crazy weather we've been having recently. Tornadoes, blizzards, dust, fires. It's been a wild world out there. I hope you've been finding some reading time, too. There's a lot of great stories out there waiting to be discovered, and today we're going to talk to award-winning author Jamie Ogle about her historical romance novels. This is taking history back even farther than most, as we're stretching almost to biblical days. I can't wait for you to learn more. Before we get started, please don't forget to follow me on Facebook or Instagram at author Erin Mifflin. I don't have my wedding pictures back from the photographer yet, but I look forward to sharing those when I do, and you won't want to miss seeing them. I also wanted to say another word about the American Christian Fiction Writers Conference, which is coming to Springfield, Missouri in September. This is a great opportunity for anyone who believes they have a story in their heart and would like to learn more about how to bring it to life. If that is you, and you'd love to take classes and meet other writers, some of these same writers we've talked to here on this show, go to acfw.com. You can also feel free to message me if you have any questions, but yes, do go to acfw.com to find out more. Now, let's bring in our guest. Hi, Jamie, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Erin. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, your first book is about St. Valentine, and your second book is about St. Nicholas. Did you set out to write about these big historical figures?
Yes and no, I guess. When I was, first pursuing writing, I've been writing as long as I can remember. But when I was first like, okay, I think I want to be a writer, writing about that, it wasn't even on my radar. I loved history, I loved historical fiction, but I wanted to do early colonial American history stuff, sort of similar to like what Laura France does. And so that's what I was writing. That's what I loved. And then it just sort of happened that I was kind of sour about Valentine's Day and just the commercial aspect of it. And I was trying to build this case to my husband, like, we should just not do this anymore. And so I just started digging into, okay, well, if I'm going to build this case, he's a very logical person. So I'm like, I need to have all the facts. So I started digging into it and just really fell in love with the story and was shocked, honestly, that I couldn't find a novel on it, because it just seemed to me like this is a story worthy of a novel, worthy of a movie. Where's this story at? And I was looking for it because I wanted to read it, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So it just kind of happened. All of a sudden, the characters were in my head, and I was seeing scenes of this thing playing out, and I was like, okay, I need to start like scribbling this down, as writers do. And then pretty soon it was a giant book, and I had written a story about Valentine, and I didn't really mean to at first, but it just kind of happened.
So it was the story that God put on your heart in a way that you were not
Absolutely.
expecting at all.
Yep.
Yes. So that's interesting. I remember from your author's note that you said you did not like Valentine's Day, and then here you wrote For Love and Treason, which is Valentine's story.
Yep. So that's definitely a God thing. And I still don't like the commercial aspect of Valentine's Day, but it's really, changed my view of it, of who he was, of what happened, and what the day is really about. So God working in my heart, for sure, number one.
Yes. And then you've now written a story about St. Nicholas, and what are a few of your personal favorite things that you learned about the real Nicholas while writing As Sure as the Sea?
I think it was like all the stories we sort of have of him are, well, some of them have been combined with another Nicholas who lived in the same area 200 years later. So when the first, biography of saints were kind of compiled, and all these stories were compiled, Nicholas of Myra and Nicholas of Sion were combined into one guy. So it was kind of interesting to go look back into this and kind of peel these stories apart and figure out which stories go with which guy. And then we end up with a St. Nicholas who's very hands-on and wants to care for people around him, which we already get from his stories, but they're a little less mystical maybe and miraculous. Those stories kind of go with the other Nicholas. So we have this very hands-on, practical guy who's risking his life to help those around him. And I just loved that.
So it sounds like your research was double for that book, almost like you were researching two novels, trying to separate the two historical figures.
Yeah. And fortunately, there are a lot of books about St. Nicholas and the real St. Nicholas and kind of pulling these things apart. So it wasn't too difficult, but it was kind of fascinating to learn about.
Now, both of your novels feature famous men from history, yet your book covers have the female heroines on them. So how much of a role did you play in choosing the covers, or is that entirely up to your publisher?
There's always a questionnaire and things I imagine, they have me fill out, how I imagine it looking, covers that I like that I think would work style wise. And when I went into Of Love and Treason, like everything, I had this whole idea in my, like, I wanted it pretty much the exact opposite of what it turned out to be. Like, I didn't want any people on the cover. I didn't like everything. And then that's what they sent back was this. And at first, like, I didn't really love it until I kind of like worked through everything they put on there. And everything that they did to create this cover was so thoughtful and so like it was just pulling in so many things from the story. And the more I looked at it, the more I was like, oh my goodness, yeah, like this is the perfect cover for it, obviously. Like, how could I, and I'm not a designer, and it's probably a really good thing because what I would have designed is not what they did. And so for the next one, I was just like, you know what, I trust you. Just go for it. You guys know what you're doing. So still filled out the questionnaire and everything, right. But I'm pretty much like, I'm no designer. You guys know what you're doing. So yes. I'll trust you on that. And they're both beautiful.
Yeah, they really are. And that kind of reminds me of so much of life too. When you get handed something in life that you have expectations about, sometimes you're like, this is not what my expectations were at all. But then when you look into the reason that God has set it up this way or designed it this way, you're like, oh, okay, this is actually better after all.
Yes, for sure.
Now, your heroine in As Sure as the Sea harvests coral and pearls. And how did you learn about this occupation?
Yeah, so as I was researching Nicholas and finding out, where he lived and like this town he lived in, it's on the coast of the Mediterranean. It's the most beautiful beaches in the world. Very different from, the Santa Claus vision people have of cold and North Pole. But as I was looking for like, okay, how do I frame his story? What else is going on in the world and in this town? And it was known for coral harvesting. And so I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I've never heard of that before. Sounds kind of terrible, honestly, but, just because of what we know about it now. But so I started looking into just the coral industry at this time, and they really had ships that would just dredge the ocean floor and net everything they could find, and then they would only save the red coral. And then they also had divers who would go down and just harvest the red coral, and they used it for beads. It was very valuable because it was the only kind of coral that didn't bleach white after it died. So it was very valuable. I thought it was just kind of a fascinating thing and just kind of took a deep dive into the red coral diving industry, read some books on it from just firsthand people who were divers, and then eventually turned to trying to save the coral because they realized the underwater world is not like up here. It doesn't just regrow and go back to how it was. But it was really fascinating, and I knew I had to include it somehow. And as soon as I started looking into the coral industry, I already had, like, Demetria popped into my head immediately, just fully fleshed out. I knew exactly what she looked like, what she struggled with, who she was. And I've never had a character just do that before. So that was kind of cool.
That is really cool. I've had that happen just a time or two where, a spark of conversation or something, that you're looking into, and all of a sudden there's a character in your head. It's just a really neat feeling.
It is. Yeah.
So both of these stories have to do with the early church. Have you gained a new appreciation or perspective on our faith from learning about its early days?
For sure. I think God, like these books, I feel like first and foremost are God's way of just working in my own heart and working through my own fears. And just, I feel like they are sort of they're sort of the thing God has used to just work in my own heart. And then just being able to dive into the early church and all the things they faced and horrible persecutions and just really needing to take a life and death stand for what they believed in was, I mean, is still really is just such a challenge for me. And just seeing how they view God is really the number one thing. As he's worth any sacrifice because of what he did for us and because of who he is. Like anything we face today is just, it's worth the struggle because of who he is and what he's done. And just like that view of lifting our eyes from everything around us and just focusing it on God, that's been a real challenge for me, and just like has been so good to have that perspective, especially as I wrote of Love and Treason during COVID and everything was kind of scary, but like the Lord really just, that was the thing that I was writing, was like just it gave me so much peace just to like lift my eyes, just lift your eyes, just again and again, like I'm good, you can trust me, that's all you need. And I think every book is kind of just reiterating that truth, but just being able to see the early church, reading all these firsthand accounts and of what the early church went through, it's the same thing. And we're still going through that today. There's still stuff going on around us, maybe not as intense persecution, in our part of the world, but we can still get overwhelmed by fear, by what's going on in the world. And our constant, thing that we need to do is to lift our eyes and trust in the Lord.
Yes, that's a really great message. And like you said, just as applicable today as it was back then. Mm-hmm. And what kind of resources did you use for learning about the early church?
I mean, there's tons and tons and tons of writing from just the early church fathers, from all that kind of stuff. I have a whole shelf full of books. And there's lots of podcasts. I love the one, it's called The History of the Early Church by Lance Ralstad. He does just such a good job of just laying out the facts of what happened, and it's just a really easy dive into church history if you're kind of new to it. So I love that. But then, yeah, tons of books, I try to read, the firsthand accounts that I can of, Augustine or Eusebius, so many people, but just kind of getting their voice and their perspective on things.
Right.
That's been good.
And just last week, you finished and submitted your third novel to your publisher. Can you tell us what it's about, or is that a secret?
I posted a little bit about it a while back. So the tentative working title right now is called The Last Gladiatrix, so who knows if that'll stay. But it's the story of a female warrior who is taken captive by Rome and sold to a gladiator school in the city of Rome, where she must perform mortal combat. But her band of rebel warriors, which include a monk and a physician, they ultimately bring an end to Rome's gladiator games.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was super fun. I'm still waiting on all the developmental edits that I'm sure are coming. So the first draft was a lot of fun to write. So we'll see what the edits are like.
Yes. But that sounds like quite a group of characters, and then just a really great story too.
Yeah, it should be fun. I'm looking forward to the edits on it.
Yes. Now, I've talked with the listeners some before with other guests that we've had on about the Christie Awards and how that's such a prestigious honor. And how did you find out last year that you were a Christie Award finalist?
The finalist just online, a webcast, and so they announced the finalists in each category. So I was just at home watching it with my kids. I had submitted in two categories, debut and another one. So debut came and went, and I was like, okay, the kids were like, oh, you weren't in there. It's like, yeah, it's okay. Like, we don't, I thought that was the one that if I had a chance, it would be that one. Mm-hmm. So I was like, just talking everybody down, like, it's okay. We don't, trying to like turn this into a teaching moment. Right. We don't win everything, and we can be happy, and it's good. And then it was announcing the historical romance, and it kind of like flipped and like really quickly like showed my book and then went back to something else, and my kids just freaked out. They were screaming and cheering, and I was like, but what if that was a mistake? Like, it has to be a mistake. What if that was an accident? But it wasn't. So that was a really sweet moment to get to share with them, and they were so excited.
That is great.
And I was too, but
Yes.
I was trying to be cautious and still like that couldn't
Right.
be true.
Yeah. And then what was it like to win then in the historical romance? I was watching and I was so excited for you, and it was just a great moment. What was it like for you?
Oh, I mean, honestly, I was up with Julie Clausen and Laura France, so I was like, oh, there's no way this is happening, but this is fun. So when they were reading they read the first lines. If anyone doesn't know, they read the first lines of the winning novel, and that's kind of how they announce it. And so I had my first line in my head. So in my book, there's like this little vignette portion before chapter one, and so I had that first line in my head. I was like, oh well, if they say this, then I'm the winner, and if not, then it's somebody else. And I read the other two. So, but they started reading my first line of the chapter one part, which was not what I had like stuck in my head. So I was like, oh yeah, that doesn't sound familiar. I don't think it's I don't think it's Laura's, so it must be Julie's because I read hers longer ago. And then they said the title. So I didn't even it didn't even occur to me that they were reading my first line at first.
You're not the first person that I've heard say that, where they were expecting like the prologue or, the little part at the beginning, and then, oh, surprise, that actually was my first line. So
Yeah, but
that's
it was
very exciting.
it was yeah, just such an honor, and then just such a gift, because this book had gone through several years of rejection and several years of just people saying nobody wants this era, nobody's looking for this story, there's no readers, there's no market for it. And then to have that happen like within the first year of it being out was just a confirmation from the Lord that this is from him. And it was pretty awesome.
Yep. And you have 2 books out, so you're gaining experience, but you're still kind of new on the scene, and I'm sure you remember what it was like before you were published. I know you were just talking about that a little bit. So what kind of advice might you have for those who are thinking about writing a book or are in the early stages of their publishing journey?
Just cover the whole thing in prayer and just seek the Lord at every step, because it's not easy. It's not easy. You're going to be slammed with doubts, slammed with fears, slammed with all these rejections, and you're going to think, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. This is who was I? What was I thinking? Who do I think I am that I think I can do this? So cover the whole thing in prayer and know for sure when you're setting out, like, yes, absolutely, God wants me to do this. Write that down and then go back to it every time those doubts are coming at you, because that is the thing that's going to keep you going forward, is just the knowledge that, yes, God wants me here. He wants me on this path. There's a reason for it. Maybe it's publishing someday. Maybe he's working in my heart. But just knowing that this is where you're supposed to be is going to give you the courage to keep going forward when it's really hard. I know that's how it was with me. I would, get some good news and then get a slew of bad news and be like, what do I think I'm doing? And then I'd have to go back and look in my journals and be like, no, God is clearly calling me to this. And I don't know if I'll get a publishing deal at the end of it, but I know that this journey is not without fruit. So there's going to be fruit somewhere, whether it's just in my own heart, in my own walk with God, or, if it, publishing would be a bonus then. But I don't know, that's all I can say is it was such a sweet time of growth for me. It was hard, but it was just the focus on God and just following him and seeking him through it all was just, I wouldn't change any of those rejection years for anything and make it happen sooner, because it was really good and really sweet.
Yes, that's really good advice. What are some of the delights in your life besides writing?
My kids, they're hilarious. They just keep me on my toes all the time. We homeschool, so that takes up a lot of time. I don't know if I would call that a delight all the time, but it's really fun just to see them just learning and growing every day. I also love to garden, vegetables, flowers, all the things. I'm not great at it, but I like to do it. And then beekeeping. I haven't done it the last couple of years just because my bees died, and summers have been pretty full with all the writing stuff, but hopefully I can get back into it, because there's something so calming and peaceful about keeping bees that I just love.
That's really cool. I did not know that about you. My family had bees part of the time when I was growing up as well.
Oh, that's awesome. They're so fun.
Is there a scripture that has been meaningful to you recently?
I have been just reading through the Psalms, and oh, they're so rich and so full. But I need to write things. When I'm reading my Bible, I end up writing the scripture as I read it because it forces me to slow down and really think about the words and the meaning, and especially if they're familiar to me. I don't want to just skim over it and immediately forget what I've read because they're familiar. So I've been reading through the Psalms, and recently Psalm 37. I love that one so much, but it's, do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and feed on his faithfulness. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. And it just is such a good reminder to not look around and get all worked up and worried about what's going on around me. And it tells me what my job is right now, and that's to trust in the Lord and do good, to dwell, to feed on his faithfulness, to delight, to commit, to trust. Those are things that I can do, and it's not my job to worry about what the outcome is of all that. It's just, that's all I do, and it's in God's hands to bring any result, and they're really none of my business. I need to just trust the Lord. So that's been just on my mind a lot lately.
I love that. That's really good. How can readers connect with you?
You can head to my website. It's jamieogle.com. You can find all of my social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. You can sign up for my newsletter there. I have a free novelette that's available when you sign up for my newsletter. And yeah, that's probably the best place to go to just kind of connect in all those areas and what works best for you.
All right. Sounds good. Got all the links there that people can follow.
Yep.
All right. Well, it's been great to chat with you today.
It's been awesome chatting with you too, Erin. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Listeners, do go to jamieogle.com to find out more about Jamie's books and follow her there. I love how she was talking about the faith of the early church and how they still needed to look to God for the things we need to look to him for today. It's wonderful to see God's faithfulness stretching across years and generations. He doesn't change. They could look to him the way we still look to him today, the one true God. If you're interested in other Christian fiction novels set around the same time period, I would look into Tracy Higley and Angela Hunt. Or for New Testament era stories, there's Heather Kaufman, Tessa Avshar, and there's a few by Davis Bunn and Jill Eileen Smith. Now that things are settling in after my wedding and honeymoon, I've got an all-star lineup of guests coming your way. I'm very excited about the interviews I've booked and cannot wait for you to meet these authors or get to know them better and hopefully find wonderful reading material to take you through the spring. To stay up to date on who these guests will be, make sure to follow me on Facebook or Instagram at author Erin Mifflin. And to keep up with my own writing journey, I'd be honored if you would go to my website at authorerinmifflin.com and subscribe to my monthly newsletter. It would be great to have you along. Until next time, happy reading!
Join us next week for another episode of The Well-Read Llama with your host, author Erin Mifflin. If you'd like to find out more about author Erin Mifflin, visit her Facebook and Instagram accounts.